Hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden. It is autumn time and I've made a list of around 11 different opportunities for self-sufficiency that you can make the most of in the garden at this time of year. The first one, I'm going to start off with the most important thing, and I'm sandwiching the two most important things. The first thing is you're going to be clearing lots of beds at the moment. So whenever I'm clearing crops, I like to twist and pull so I can leave as many of the roots in the ground as possible. This is some old kind of flowering kale. I'm going to bash it up and I'm going to put it on the compost, because what you're going to be getting is a huge volume of compost coming out of your garden as you begin to clear beds. And I'll be talking about clearing beds a little later on. So make compost. Also, up here behind me, I got these trees. And the great thing about trees is that they have these things here called leaves and grass. And if you've got some grass or a lawn, you can put some leaves down, mow over it, and you've got a 50-50 mix of greens and browns. Perfect recipe for making a nice bulky compost, and you don't need to worry about peat for that. You know, it's a nice alternative to peat that you can make yourself. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a polytunnel. So if you have a polytunnel or an undercover growing area, well, there's many things you can do, and there's two opportunities that I'm going to do in one. The first opportunity is you can move some of your more kind of mature, semi-mature plants, like this here. This is supposed to be a giant chard, but it ended up just being chard. So, hello chard. You can dig this out. I mentioned the dig words, naughty me. Dig it out, and you can then transplant it into a bed in a polytunnel. And because of that ambient temperature over winter, it's going to explode with growth. And so you're going to get a lot more growth, a lot more stuff to eat, and that is going to turn into a jungle. But you don't want to turn the whole polytunnel into a jungle, because if you're thinking about winter, it usually means that you've got colder temperatures and you want something nice to be able to relax in the garden. And so what I would recommend is you create a little space in the polytunnel to create a seating area. So you've got like a indoor-outdoor hybrid office, and I think that's just such a lovely thing. It's less so about self-sufficiency, but what you want to do is to get out to your garden as much as possible. And if that means that you've got a nice little table and a chair in there, you can have a cup of coffee and come out here, even when the weather is dismal, you're still connected to the garden, you're still thinking about the garden. Every time you come to the garden, you're picking up thoughts, and I just destroyed that cosmos. I thought it was a little bit more hardy, but obviously this is a delicate little flower. So there we go. Now, the other thing that I love to do at this time of year, it's another thing that I lead on, is see what worked well, what didn't work well. Look, these are some multi-sown leeks. These did not work well. This is run to seed. I don't want to see that, so I'm going to stick to my traditional method. I believe you can grow leeks multi-sown. I've seen it grow multi-sown. Didn't work for me. However, always worth trying things. I will, though, make note of certain crops that have done really well. I'm going to grab this leaf here. This is Asturian tree cabbage. I talk about it all the time, but it's a lot of fun. So what I like to do is, with everything fresh in my mind, I like to have a little look around the garden, and I like to see what varieties have done well. So I've got this Asturian tree cabbage, and then coming more hidden around this area, I've got some bolt hardy beetroot. So I'll be going around making notes so I don't forget them, because I want to make sure that when it comes to my seed order, I want to get what I know grows really well. And that brings us on to the next opportunity for self-sufficiency. Try and get your main seed order in as early as possible, because one of the things that can happen is that you leave it until about last minute, and then you realise some of your favourite things might have gone out of stock. And also, if you look at some interesting seed sites like Real Seeds, they often have quite rare things that you want to get your hands on and try out, but they've only got maybe limited to 100 packets. So if you get in nice and early, who knows what kind of journey that might lead you down and how that might influence your gardening. You might, Asturian tree cabbage is a prime example of being a rare seed packet from Real Seeds a few years ago, and now it's an absolute staple that I have every single year in the garden. So think about that. Next up, it's actually talking about soft fruit. It's actually convenient that I'm here. But one of the best things that you can do is to create your own, not like a proper garden nursery or anything, but there's so much power in making as many plants as possible, especially perennials, and that means taking cuttings. So usually the way that I do it, and it's all kind of along the back side of the garden, I've got loads of black currants and red currants and gooseberries, and in about a month all of the leaves will have fallen off. I'll be taking loads of cuttings, and sometimes what I do is I will just find a little bit of space, put the cuttings in, and then next year I've got hundreds of plants just from pruning my soft fruit. These plants I can swap with people and exchange and barter, and then you can do the same. Like over here, this is another prime example. This here is comfrey. So I could actually lift this out when it all dies back, and I can divide the crown up, and I can make multiple plants from this one thing that I could sell if I wanted to. I could swap it with other gardeners. It's just a nice way to remove money from the equation, but there is real kind of gardener's wealth in having plants that you can give away and get for other things. Now, on the terms of like comfrey, another opportunity to do in autumn is to nutrient bank. And what I mean by that is look at things that have lots of nutrients and find a way to bank up those nutrients. So with this comfrey here, I'm be slicing it all the way back, sticking it in a pot, putting a brick on top, and allowing it to naturally break down into almost like a molasses-like syrup, which I can then use next year to add to watering cans, and I can fertilize all of my plants using that free resource. So that keeps me nice and happy as well. Now, moving on to the next thing is with autumn, just because it's the end of the growing season, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the gardening season. Gardening is not just about sowing seeds and harvesting and all the maintenance. Gardening is about everything that goes into making a garden. It's a bit like if you are making a meal, usually you're just focusing on those ingredients. But in order to make that effortless, you need to have a functioning kitchen with all the right crockery and plates and everything to make that happen. And it's the same thing for a garden. So the shift turns into looking at how the garden operates as a whole. So one of the best things that you can do in terms of an investment that I think is always reskilling, learning new skills. And so what I would say is look at things like catch up on YouTube videos, because we've all been busy in our gardens, gardening, growing stuff. For me, it's always trying to harvest and grow asparagus successfully. Finally happened this year, very happy. Now I'm just letting this bleed into like a polyculture-esque style of growing. But learn as many new skills as possible. Hotbeds was kind of my big skill that I learned last autumn that I've implemented this year. There'll be a link down in the description about hotbeds. And just kind of scratch that curiosity. What makes you really curious? What's something that you've seen other gardeners do and think, actually, I would really like to give that a go. Moving on with my list, we're flying through this. Next is, we're almost done actually. I was talking about the idea of taking cuttings. One of the other things that you can do, and I gotta go back here, is you can try and save seed. So I've got these climbing beans, and there is wealth. Just like there's wealth in having plants, there's wealth in having seed stock. And one of the best things that I like about, say, local permaculture groups is that they have a seed swap day, usually towards the end of winter. And so you can harvest these seeds and you can pass these on and swap them for things that might be a bit rare, things that other people have done. But again, this is almost a form of money, be it seeds and plants, that other gardeners, it's a currency that other gardeners recognize. So as long as you're happy to trade with other gardeners, it's a really powerful currency to have. Now, at the moment, this is something I'm going to have to pull down and this whole bed is going to be cleared. And there's a couple of options that you can do, and this is kind of like the last main opportunity, which is again capping it with a goal of soil health. Making lots of compost is really important, but maintaining soil health is really important. So you've got two options here, and it depends on your climate. If it's going to get really cold really quick, you're not going to have enough time now to sow cover crops like Phacelia to then chop and drop and protect the beds. So what I would say is, or what I plan to do here, is harvest and pick everything and just chop and drop whatever plant matter or plant material exists, cover that with cardboard and allow that chop and drop layer to break down. And if I feel like I need to add a bit more fertility early in spring, I can then put over a little layer of compost, nice and simple. So thinking about how can you reduce bare soil over winter is one of the best things that you can do to help your garden become more resilient. Now, the final opportunity is more of a plug. Next year, I'm running my first ever 5-day intensive kitchen garden permaculture design course, which I am doing at a farm up in North Wales. We're kind of turning over a garden there. It is fully catered. You can come and camp as well, no extra cost for that. And I'm letting my newsletter subscribers know about this first. So there's a link down below. It's Friday today. I'm sharing more information on Monday, on Monday's newsletter. So hopefully see you there. And we're going to be aiming for around 30 to 35 people, make it a really nice, amazing community. And yeah, hopefully see you there. And thanks for watching.